are we opening the council
You're open
meeting?
the regular meeting.
The
take
regular
public
meeting?
comment, then go to closed
Public
session.
Any
Comment, then
public
close.
comment? No, then let's move on to the closed session and,
You should bang it again.
roll call? Do we need to have roll call? No, not yet. All right, good, go. Okay, are we ready? We'll open the meeting back up for regular June 14th meeting. And you gonna report out the closed session?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and public, council did meet in closed session from 5 PM to 5:30 PM this afternoon, receiving an update on employee negotiations and pending litigation. No reportable action was taken. Staff was given direction.
Any public comment on anything? Oh, that's right, excuse me. Why is it up here first? All right, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. Mike? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I pledge allegiance to the
Please stay standing for the prayer.
Would you pray with me? Lord, we pause in this time to remember that you preside over all humanity, and from your position you see all of our activities, all our thoughts, all our conversations, and so you, from that place, see all. And we want to turn to you in this time as we preside in this place over many of the same things for this specific community, and understand that you offer to us wisdom and help and guidance. And we confess that we can be a people who often think we see all things from all perspectives like you, but we don't. And so in that, we logically turn to you for help and ask for you to lead this place. May there be hearts that are open and listening. We are in a time right now in our culture and our nation where there is so much rhetoric and division and attack. May this place not be in that kind of tone, but be in a tone of your kingdom, which is to listen and to love and to learn from one another, as well as to move forward in decisions. So bless this time and bless these leaders, and may they know your presence. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, roll call, Lisa?
Councilmember Gary Barton. Daniel DeGraff. Here. Leo Zuber.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mike Rasuccia.
Present.
Mayor Dean Euchre.
Here. At this time, if anybody from the public would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda, ma'am, state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Melinda Kopp, and I live at 1102 Ulrich Avenue in Modesto. And I'm here as your librarian. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge and thank all of you. And James Pease isn't here. There's a seat empty. But during the closed time, the strange time of the past years, 2 years, even though we weren't face-to-face in a lot of ways, the city officials helped the library so immensely. It felt a little lonely over there and having to ask for things like extra cleanings and can you do this for us and that. And you always do everything with grace and care, and that helps make the library work. And the library is an important part of the city of Ripon and an important part of our lives. And so I'm looking at Tom. I spent quite a bit of time with your son as he studied for the bar. What a lovely young man he is. So I just wanted to thank you publicly. Thank you. And you guys make it work. Thanks. Come and see me.
Seeing nobody else, let's move to approval of the minutes.
Move.
I'll second.
Passes with a 5-0 vote. And approval of the agenda as posted or amended. Anybody?
Yeah, I have two items I want to pull from the consent calendar. Items 1.3G and 1.3H.
Okay, and with that,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
and that passes with a 5-0 vote. Okay, Leo, 1.3
No, we have to approve the consent calendar.
Oh.
Motion to approve the consent
consent.
calendar.
Second.
Okay. well, let me- Okay, and that passes with a 5-0. Do you want to do both of them at the same time? Or
Yeah,
they-
I can do them both. They're just sort of general questions. 1.3G are the landscape maintenance districts. I just have a couple of operational questions that weren't answered in the engineer's report. Some of those districts have written into the agreement an escalator for inflation. One of them is like 1.6%, a couple of them are like 5%. My question is, do we apply that every year so that even though we don't necessarily give the full assessment, we're not losing the escalator, so that if 8 years from now we do have to go full-time, we're getting the full benefit rather than having lost it because we didn't apply it? Does that make sense?
It does. We have not been doing that calculation, but we should be. I'll update the engineer's report prior to July, and we'll include that in there. And, you know, the process that we go through, I mean, obviously in July, it's gonna be a public hearing, but the council's eventually gonna approve these assessments to be on the tax rolls. But when the districts were established, they did have those escalators, and we'll add that to the engineer's report to track that over time. Even though the full assessment's not being applied, the council could see what the full amount
Yeah.
is.
What's your maximum amount?
Yeah, because if we ever go max, I want to be able to go to what we're entitled to rather than because we didn't apply it, we've lost some.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll add that to the engineer's report for July.
And how are the administrative fees for each one? I noticed they're different for every one of them.
They are. So the administrative fees is really how we allocate overhead, and we do that for all budget categories. And I think for this upcoming fiscal year, it was around 16%. So the landscape districts and the lighting district, based off their expenses, they also get allocated 16%.
So if 16% of the overall budget is administrative, then we charge that ratio. If it,
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
certain departments that make up the overhead number, administrative being one of them.
Okay.
So we take that and we distribute that to all the other departments to pay that overhead amount.
okay. My last question is about the vineyards. They're getting a reduced rate, but it's not as reduced as some of the others. But their fund has a pretty significant positive balance. I guess my question is, how high does that thing have to go before they get more of a break than they're getting now?
Yeah, the Vineyards has quite a bit of infrastructure, if you will, those walls out front. They're on River and Fulton.
Okay.
They're all included in that district. There's a number of, the play structure is included in that district. So they have quite a bit of infrastructure that we're planning to replace at some point in the future. So Public Works is estimated to have $300,000 into that capital replacement account. I think right now they're about $90,000. And even without the increases, they're producing a surplus of about $25,000 a
So
year.
at the point we get to that point, then they could, assuming things stay the same, they could get a bigger reduction in their.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, and then same thing what you talked about with the other ones. We'll continue to calculate what those annual increases are, so we know that number, and we could have that in the engineer's report.
okay,
Since it got pulled, I have a question. Are you done, Leo?
yeah.
I could ask you this before, Kevin, but I wrote it down. So it looks like there's 5 assessment districts that get funded from the general fund. Did I count that right? Oh,
Yes,
it
there is.
Okay, all right.
Because those, when they were established,
We didn't
no
put it,
escalator was
exactly,
put in there,
exactly.
Yeah.
so they don't generate enough.
So we have
Wait, now I got one H. For this lighting district, if we want to change the assessment, that has to go to a vote, right?
It does.
218.
It
Okay.
does. Yeah.
Because I noticed we're getting pretty close, but we have a loan payment or something that's gonna pay off, which is gonna buy us some time, but eventually we're gonna end up paying more than we're taking in.
Exactly, you're killing my thunder on the budget presentation, but your intuition is exactly right. You could start seeing it peaking out in a few years, and we're gonna have some decisions to make, so, but that's exactly right.
Okay. I'll move to approve 1.4 G and H.
Second.
okay, passes with 5-0. And that's the end of the consent calendar, and we have a proclamation. Is there somebody here from the elder and dependent adult? Can you come up here and I will present you with your proclamation?
I forgot about that thing.
I'm just gonna read the top here, quarter. Oh, okay. Come on up, come next to me, I won't bite you.
I don't know, be careful.
Okay, so this proclamation is elder and dependent adult abuse awareness month. Whereas since 2006, the month of June has been recognized as the elder adult abuse awareness month, and June 15th is the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, the World Health Organization, and the United Nations, and the rest of all the codgers on this council will fall into this category. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we, presentation, okay, ordinance.
Correct.
The or-
First
the
reading
ordinance, add chapter 9.42, adoption of military equipment use policy to the Ripon Municipal Code to order for the police department to continue using military surplus equipment. Is that you, chief?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, tonight you have a first reading and introduction of an ordinance, adoption of a military equipment use policy. This is brought on by Assembly Bill 481, which requires the city to adopt a policy regarding the funding, acquisition, and use of military equipment by the police department. This police department policy must be approved through an ordinance, which is brought to you tonight. The ordinance must be approved through a resolution which will be presented to you at a future meeting. I would request that we waive the first reading and I'd answer any questions.
Chief, I've got a question. And I don't know where it's at, but my question is, what are the specific requirements? There was something I read in there that we need to meet certain requirements.
I couldn't hear you.
Someplace within this ordinance, it says that we need to meet certain specific requirements.
Correct.
What are the requirements? Because I didn't find them in there.
The requirements that are set forth in the Assembly Bill
Yeah.
are that you adopt a policy,
Okay.
that it gets put forth through an ordinance and adopted through a resolution. Those are the requirements.
Oh, I thought there was something actually in the policy that we needed to meet certain requirements, either to qualify, not qualify, or whatever.
They do have a definition of military equipment that's included in the Assembly Bill, which is also adopted in the policy. But that definition is not all-inclusive.
Is this gonna change anything we do?
No.
Okay, it's just we're adopting the policy, but it's not gonna change what we do now or in the future, as far as you
Correct.
can see.
Yeah, anytime we bring in new equipment, it's either adopted through this, by the city council through a budget or a formal request through the police department. Anything that's going to require additional funds through either purchasing or upkeep, even if it's through a donation. So most of the equipment that's included in the policy that we're have in draft form is items that we've had for almost a decade.
But it doesn't limit what we, because I know there was some years ago, there was some big deal about having armored vehicles at cities. It's gonna look like the Army's out there doing things.
It doesn't restrict that at this time. The council itself can put restrictions
Okay,
on it.
all right,
The-
Thank
The
you.
state itself is not restricting it.
okay.
I have one question too. And maybe it's nitpicky. Does this ordinance and the policy that's coming apply to equipment that is provided to us by the military? Or does it apply to equipment that the military uses, but we may buy from a gun store in Sacramento?
It's any and all equipment that could be considered for military use.
So it's considered, it's not the source, it's what it is.
Correct.
Okay, thank
So
you.
what if it identifies as civilian?
Then it's civilian. How dare you question this?
Do we need a vote?
Yes, we need a,
Yes.
Just as an example, we have 3 UAS drones that are not military grade, but because the military uses drones, they have to be included in the policy.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'll move we waive the first reading and adopt the ordinance.
second?
It passes with the 5-0. With that, we have a discussion item. Is there somebody here from Frontier? Can come on up and state your name and your address and give it.
Yeah, and as he's making his way up, let me introduce, this is Doug McAllister. He's from Frontier Communications. So he's gonna give the presentation tonight about a project they'd like to do to bring fiber optic to every residential home in Ripon. So this is for information this evening from Mr. McAllister. And then if the council does have some interest, then staff would be bringing back kind of the next steps of where this project would head during a construction phase and how we would process that. So, go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Ken. Is this on?
Doesn't sound like. Can you hear me? Can you turn the volume up?
Oh, there we go. My name is Doug McAllister. I'm Vice President for External Affairs for Frontier Communications. And Mr. Mayor, City Council, I sincerely appreciate you giving me the time to do this. I sat on your side of the dais for 13 years, and I know exactly how these meetings are from that side as well. And so I'm going to try to do my best to make this time worth your while, and so that it's something that you remember fondly and not the other way around. My role here tonight is to inform you of something that Frontier is doing with our fiber optic build. It is, we go to the next slide, if you will, please. Frontier Communications purchased Verizon's footprint, if you will, and product, I don't know, several years ago, 5-10 years ago. Back then, I was with Verizon as their Director of Government External Affairs. And at that point, the powers that be at Frontier didn't see the need for somebody to talk to you. And so they cut the team at that point. So I went back to my consulting, and I was fine. I danced in that space between business and government, and I was still in office at the time, so I was plenty busy, as you know how that goes. And and then that was about 10 years ago. And about 5 months ago, Frontier came looking for me. And the reason for that is that it's a whole new shop from the leadership side. They've come out of their bankruptcy 3 or 4 years ago, or whatever that was, and have a new CEO and a new board and a new culture. And in the process of this, what they're trying to accomplish is to pick up where Fios left off. And that basically is to bring and replace the copper that is 140 years old, the twisted pair copper, that when it gets wet, it stops working and all those kinds of things, is to replace all that with fiber optic technology. And they're doing this in a very aggressive way. In fact, this is I believe, if it may be, I got to get the numbers on this because I keep saying this. It may be the largest, if not the second largest build of its kind in the world right now. It's happened over a period of 4 to 5 years. And so the folks at Frontier, to their credit and their culture, decided, this is not their quote, this is my summary of what I've observed and why I am here. That basically is, if we're going to do something bigger than we ever have, then we had better do business better than we ever have. And I just know from my own personal experience, once again, on your side of the dais, dealing with utilities, dealing with waste haulers, dealing with those folks who are here to provide a service and stuff. But it wasn't always the best experience, put it that way, and such. And so what Frontier is trying to do is change that metric. And so they brought me back. And the idea behind this is that they wanted to create a more collaborative way of doing business, meaning rather than come and the first thing you know about a build is when somebody pulls a permit to do something in your streets. The idea ideally is that I have already talked to your city manager, I've already talked to your planning director, and ideally I will have talked to you guys at some point and said, here's how it's going, what do you think, what are some ideas you have, what are the things we're missing out on? It's a very collaborative discussion. So as I go through this, I'm going to make this as brief as I can. As I go through this, keep in mind what we're trying to create here is a collaborative partnership so that we'll be able to bring to you this 22nd century technology for your citizens, but not mess you up in the process. And that's where this is coming down here. So if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And it's kind of hard to see there. Engineers know what that means. But basically, I'm only going to have that there, and your staff's talking to my engineers and things about how this works. But your staff and my staff are working together to plan the phasing of this build, to bring the fiber anywhere that we have been. We're called the ILEC. We're the phone company, have been probably forever. And the different names, Pac Bell, Verizon, now Frontier, and things. And so anywhere that there has been a copper line and phones, that's where we're going. We're pulling the copper out and putting the fiber in. And right now it's about 75% engineered. And once again, we're doing this in coordination with your staff to see to it that we don't miss something that's going to make this job harder than it needs to be. But the idea here is when we're done, your entire city will have a fiber optic. And I want to explain what that looks like as we go forward. So next slide, please. There's a lot of bullet points up there. I want to emphasize just 3 of them. The first one, the fiber network, is 100% fiber from a central office to the customer's home. That is literally true. You hear many times about folks putting in fiber, but they bring it to the neighborhood. And then from the neighborhood is back to copper again, to the house. And what we're doing is, by the time you get to the side of the house, it's still fiber optic cabling. And you'll see why that's important here in a second. The second thing, households can connect to multiple devices and at once without worries. What that means is that what you've maybe experienced in the past with DSL and copper in your homes and businesses as well, is that you get the speeds you're promised if no one else is on there with you. But as soon as at the height of the day, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're good. But maybe at 5 o'clock in the evening or when the ball game comes on or whatever the case might be, you start to lose capacity. And that is not going to be the case with fiber. You're going to have the capacity, and you go down to the 4th bullet point there on the left. High-speed internet, Frontier fiber optic offers speeds up to 2 gigs. This is massive. This is massive capacity. I was excited. I was the mayor of Murrieta, and when Verizon came to me to ask for Murrieta to be the first city in the nation to have Fios, remember that back then? To have Fios throughout the entire city, I was thrilled because I was trying to find a way to bring a broadband backbone and transform our city to where we had no jobs to a city that has plenty of jobs, but we needed the technology. But it cost too much money. And then when they came to me and they said, sure, let's do this, I said, hey, all I heard was, I'm going to get a broadband backbone for $0. When can you start? Now, at some point, we'll have coffee, and I'll explain why it went not really good after that, but we got it fixed. But at the end of the day, what happened is that Murrieta went from a bedroom community with everybody was going to San Diego and LA for their jobs to a biotech center in the world. And it was all because of the technology. That was back when the comparison of what you had with copper was like if you get like a garden hose capacity. And they said the difference between that and what they were bringing in Fios then was like a 10-foot culvert. Well, that was 200 megs. This is up to 2 gigs. This is like a 40-foot culvert as far as speed and as far as capacity. And so in a world that is during COVID and post-COVID, folks that are now working remotely and working from their homes, that is now going to be possible without question as far as the size of what you can do, the speed at which you can do it, and these speeds are symmetrical, up and down. They're not going to have really good speeds downloading, but when it comes time to upload something, it's going to get pixelated. That's not the case at this point. So that's what we're bringing here, and that's what's at stake, and I don't know if you can tell, but we're kind of excited about it. We go to the next slide, please.
Quick question. So,
Sure.
What is 2 gigs? Like, for an example, I have my stuff uploads or downloads at 200 something.
Okay,
How does 2 gigs compare to that?
okay, I'm not good with metric, but let me try, okay? 200 up and down, my guess is that you're getting 200 down, but when you try to upload something, it takes a while if it's a big file, because you're probably only getting 50 up in reality. A gig, it'd be 1,000
Okay.
megs, and so 2 of those would be 2,000.
I got it.
And once again, it's up and down speeds are the same. You're not gonna get a fast one and a slow one. You're gonna be the same. This is how it works. And on that picture before, that it was kind of hard to see. I would have been able, if I could have seen it, could have showed you where the central offices are. It's a wire center, and it starts there in the first box. And from there, it is fiber optic cabling that goes to a hub in the second box. The third box then goes to an area that is serves between 6 and 8 homes. And then from that box, it then goes to the side of the house. And so it is fiber from this wire center all the way to the side of the house. And once you get to the side of the house, I'll show you what happens in a second, but it then converts to whatever you have in your house, if it's coaxial or whatever else. But that distance between your wall and your router is so small, it does not slow down what you're trying to, your speeds at all. It allows your capacity to be the same. And let's go to the next slide. These are bad pictures. I hate them, but until my team gets to better ones, it's the ones I have to use. But they do show, the first one is a distribution hub, which is that first one I told you, wire center, goes to the hub. It's about, I don't know, as tall as this desk, maybe as tall as your desk there, and small. And I will tell you, these pictures, we take a picture of where these things are going, and when we're done, it looks the same. We remediate that back to that or something better. We also want to put these hubs and work with staff as well to identify where these can go so that they're unobtrusive. They're not in front of somebody's house. They're not, ideally they're on a property line or they're hidden around a corner or whatever it can take. Ideally, not in the neighborhoods themselves and such. And so we do our best to make them a non-issue as far as this DEG is concerned. The next, where it goes from there is to the fiber pull box, which is then going into the neighborhoods, and then, which is where I said had the 6 or 10 customers at that point. Sometimes we stay on poles, because if we're already there, we just overlash the fiber to the copper. But then when we get to going to the houses, it is also from the aerial terminal, that last picture, from that point to the side of the house, once again, it is going to be completely fiber. And let me show you the next slide. That's the ONT. It's called Optical Network Terminal. Actually, we've upgraded those so they look even better, but that's the box where the fiber goes into and then converts to whatever you're using inside your house. And then before we go any further, one of the things that is important to notice, this is a one and done. Once we get this put into your city, replacing, if we have existing conduit, we're just putting it through the existing conduit. If it's already have aerial, we'll just do the aerial. At some points, we have to do the boring, and we work very closely to make sure that's done the right way. But once it's in, it's in. Right now, we're offering up to 2 gigs. When the market says 3 gigs is what people want, all we have to do is change a light in that wire center. Now we're at 3 gigs. Now they want 10 gigs. We change the light. Now we're at 10. So we're not going to be coming back to say, we got to tear your streets up again, or we got to dig more, or we got to do this or that. This is something that once we get this in, everything gets changed in the wire center. Also, the only power that's necessary is in the wire center. There's no need for power after that. It's all driven from the wire center. So if outages and those kinds of things are basically, we still have generators in case the city loses power, but it's a thing of the past. Next, please. Collaboration looks like this. And this is where I want to have a quick chat with you guys, with the council here. First of all, expedite, educate, and escalate. Expedite this is where, and I want to give kudos to your staff. I think it's my 3rd plane trip up here, I think it is, and to work with staff and now to speak with you folks. And the idea here is working with, my version of expedite is not the same version that a utility normally has. Here's how a utility typically wants things done. They go ahead, they make the plan, and then they come and tell you what they're gonna do, and they try to bully you into do it their way. Our version here at Frontier is that we want to collaborate to make the plan, because we feel like if we collaborate, we'll get the permits faster. We feel like we collaborate, we'll get everything else faster in a way that will work for both sides. And so your staff's been great, absolutely great, to what I call find a way to yes, help us do that. The second thing is educate. Part of what I'm doing right now is just that, is to educate. I remember, I was about 13 years in your seat. One of the things I hated the most was being surprised. I'd walk into a grocery store, and I'm passionate about this part. I walk into a grocery store and I get waylaid by somebody. Mr. Mayor, what about this? And I would say sometimes, about what? Because I didn't know. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know anything about it. And I hated that happening. And we're trying to work with staff to see to that never happened. I do not want this to happen to you about this build. We want to make sure that you have access, that you understand what's going on. So anybody asks you any question, you can either answer the question or you can call me, and I'll help you with that. The last thing I want you to be is surprised about any of this. The last thing here is escalate. I have a staff, you have a staff, and our staffs are working together, and they deal with issues and such like that. But if anything raises, something happens, it's a neighbor whose service is out, or question about what's going on in the construction, or I don't care what it is. If it comes to you or your city manager, you call me. I'm the one who steps in to find out what's going on and get it resolved one way or the other. I've given your city manager staff my cell number. That's this phone right here. It's with me all the time. You call me and I'll take care of it. Or you have your city manager, have Kevin call me and I'll take care of it. The whole purpose for this is I don't want us to come to you and say, gimme, 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 but there's nothing we do back. There's no reciprocal service in that case. I just want to make sure that you have a tool in your tool belt, and that's called Doug. Next, please. One of the things we're very passionate about is communicating. We want to communicate to your residents. I want to communicate to you. We want to communicate to your residents. This is just two examples. The one on the left is their door hangers that go out. I believe they go out 72 hours ahead of before they get in and start doing the build. But the actual hours, the actual number of days is going to be determined by your staff. They'll tell us how soon they want those out. We also realize that if they're like me, I don't even look at the door hangers that I find on my doors. And so we have to do other things to try to get their attention so that they don't get up on a Thursday morning, try to go to work and find, when they don't know why those people are out in the front yard or out in the easement or out in the street in front of their house. We want to find ways to communicate with them. Yard signs is another way, where we put the signs out ahead of time saying, here's fiber is coming. And there's phone numbers that go to live people, and those live people can answer live questions and such. But if that doesn't work and it gets your attention, you call me, and I'll find out what's going on and let you know. These are just examples. Ken will come up with other ideas, I'm sure. He'll come up with ideas. Well, I also want you to do a letter, or I also want you to do, or can you put an ad in the paper? Whatever. Our job is to work with your staff to try our best to communicate with your citizens as good as possible, so that they're not surprised either. Next slide, please. The cost of these things, if the 500, I think you said, 200 up and down, I believe. Our small package is 500 up and down, symmetrical, and that's $50 a month. It's $75 for a gig, and for some reason somebody wants 2 gigs. Honestly, I don't know what you'd use all of it for, but if they want the 2 gigs, that's $150 a month plus some other fun stuff in there. These prices are introductory prices, but they are not going to be the doorbuster prices that you will see. We divorced ourselves, we'll grandfather some in, but we basically have divorced ourselves from video, meaning the offering the packages of 1,000 channels or the premium channels and all those kinds of things. That's where the cost comes in. So typically you get into a new service at a low price and the next year it doubles or something like that. That's because it's very expensive to do that. By divorcing ourselves from that content, what we are is a huge capacity corridor for as much content as you want, and then you can stream. And that's what I do. I don't even have TV anymore. I just stream whatever I want to watch for those odd occasions I get to watch TV. And so those prices while they may go up a few percentage points next year, the change in price is not going to be demonstrably big, because the fact is, internet gets cheaper over time. The bigger our build is, the more folks we have doing this, the cheaper we can do this. And so I'm not in marketing, I'm not in sales. I just don't expect those prices to change demonstrably over the next few years. But that's what you can get, 500, the gig, and then the 2 gigs.
Can you run
Next slide.
telephones off of that too, like Spectrum?
Pardon?
Can you run telephones off of these?
Yes, we are the ILEC, we're the phone company, and so the phones will be there as well. And also, and if some folks want to use VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, it's this internet, so they can do that as well. And those packages all exist. I do not know how that works pricing-wise, but yes, those services are there. I think that's it for that slide, okay. Oh, questions. So the idea here is that I stop talking and you start asking questions, and if I can help you, I will. Otherwise, you have a short night.
Any questions?
I got one question. It's maybe not super relevant to the fiber. I mean, I like the idea of fiber, but in the past, I mean, from personal experience with the service, and not so much the service, but when you'd have outages, the customer service, when you had problems, was a problem. So I hope that has been addressed or is getting addressed. But I know from several people, you get questioned, oh, what's the best internet? What's the best internet? Over and over and over again, the customer service has been an issue for you guys, and hopefully that's something that you can get improved.
I just solved an issue yesterday with a customer. I forget which city it was in. I think it was Yucaipa, who finally got to me through the city. So it worked after being out for 6 days. We had it fixed that day. Funny thing, when you have VP in front of your name, people tend to jump and do things. And so that's what I'm saying, is that ideally, we're going to get better and better and better at this. But for those times that we screw up or something happens we don't know about, in this case, a squirrel had chewed through his line, and so we had to fix that. So the customer service has got to be top of mind. And so when your constituents, your neighbors, whatever, if they contact you, I'm here. You call me, and we'll make sure that happens, that gets fixed.
Anybody?
So in non-technical terms, that first step of the transmission of this from, I forget what.
Wire center?
Yeah, the wire center to that box.
Right.
So a backhoe is digging around and hits that line. How much of an issue is that? How quickly is something like that going to be repaired? Because that puts down a good portion or maybe all of the city.
That is hard not to get technical on, because there is redundancy involved. I don't know how the redundancy works. I'm not the engineer and such, but there is redundancy. Some of the stuff that we're required to by the CPUC and things, because we are the phone, we're the ILEC, and for that, I cannot stand here and tell you how that works. I can also say that it's highly unlikely that a backhoe will be able to do that because of how deep it will be in most cases, and also the way it's supposed to work is before any work is done at all, they're supposed to call to mark with where the utilities are and such. And so if somebody's gonna be doing work in the vicinity of any of our facility, we would go out and mark, do not dig here, or don't dig any further than this. And most of the time that works, not every time. And so when it doesn't work, the answer to your question, I wish I had a better one. All I know, there is redundancy, I don't know how it works.
Yeah, you probably know when you get utilities marked, it works about 80% of the time, 70%.
That's if they come out and mark it.
Yeah.
I have an issue right now. I will tell you, in all candid, is in a city in Southern California that I need to be at their meeting tomorrow morning, but I'm going to be meeting with Lathrop, partly to talk about police discussions and things you guys are doing, so we can help make that happen. But also talk about the build we're doing there. But the reason for that meeting is exactly that, is that one of the utilities came out and mismarked most of their stuff, and so we dug where they marked, and it was wrong, and it was not pretty. And so I would normally be there to see to it there's accountability for that. I've got people going to be there for that. But to your point, you're exactly right. So sometimes those things happen. Once again, when they do, if they do, you call me. I'll make it happen.
Any other questions? Ken? No comment?
No, so Doug just really wanted to come share their project this evening with the council. Like I said, we will bring back kind of the process that it would take for the different phasing. We're working through that with their engineering group. Like I said, some of it's going to be overhead, which is very minimal impact to anything with the city, but there is some of the build will require some boring and trenching, so they'll have to do encroachment permits and stuff, but we'll bring back kind of that process of the phasing. I do think there's a time schedule too that you
Yeah,
have.
as you were speaking, I was trying to remember, because I was just told that while I was on the plane coming up here. I believe it's about 75% engineered, and so the process of finishing that up. I believe they'd like to get started sometime in July with the first phases of this. And so part of that is coordinating with, any street programs you have or anything like that. As far as the length of time, it's a pretty good sized build. I think within the city is around 5,000 homes we're gonna be around. And then some of this is in the county. But so I'll say 3 to 4 months. As long as we do everything we're supposed to do and do it right, it shouldn't take that long.
So,
Actually, I have one more question too.
go ahead.
So, I suspect you probably have people that are still kind of dialing up on your old system, da-dun, da-dun, whatever it happens to be, because it's very, very slow. Do you do some mathematical calculation, 5,000 houses based on history, 30% are gonna sign? I mean, you're making a big CapEx improvement here or expense.
Yep.
You're assuming so many people are gonna sign up, that you have no clue right now, right?
We know what we have. We suspect that, part of the education process and the marketing team is we do a lot of that with emails and ads and events and to get the word out. But that's just the nature of doing business in America. And right now, the folks at Frontier have done all the studies, they've done run all the data, and they're confident that they can get the minimum. They fully expect to do very well here. As such, but we have to make the case for it. There will be folks who want to stick with copper. Okay, well, we're not going to take them off. What happens is we go buy the house, but we don't go to the house until they order it. And when they order it, then we go underground and come up to their house that way, and and that's at no cost to the customer. So as they order it, we'll fill it up, and I don't know what that. I do know there's a percentage. I don't know what that one is.
So if somebody has Spectrum now or some other system, and you run your fiber optics, and they decide to go with you, you just run it at the house, and it automatically goes into the system? There's nothing inside the house that needs to be changed, or
Nothing in the house.
routers, or?
Nothing inside the house has to change. Obviously, if they're not on, they don't have internet, they'll have to have a router and things like that. But once, if you go by the front of the house, and then we come off of that into the wall, and to that ONT. Sometimes that's inside the garage, sometimes and that's where we plug in, and we plug in into that box as well, their existing wiring for the phones and all that kind of thing. And that converts the light into that. And so if, whatever phones they had before will still work. It's just now going over fiber instead of copper.
So the old router goes away, and there's no router anymore now?
No, the router stays. As such, and they can use one.
But if you don't own a router?
They don't own one, they'll need one. If they want wireless, they don't want a wireless, which I can't imagine, but if they don't want wireless, then you just plug it into the wall. And it'll just be right into the wires and such.
I don't know how it all works, sorry, that's far beyond this meeting, I guess. Huh?
It's using light instead of pulses to go to the wire.
Yeah,
But ultimately, this gives us our citizens, another option.
exactly. They've been asking for it.
But if you get on Facebook, it's all you ever see is people complaining about. So, I think I think you should do well,
Well, we have to earn that.
Yeah,
Like-
obviously.
We have to earn that, and part of that is earning that with you all, and that's why I'm here, is to start.
And yeah,
to start
my
that.
wife pays all that stuff at my business and my house. Are you cost-effective compared to who we have now?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Cost,
He just gave us
Yeah.
a
right,
cost.
I mean, I don't,
Well, I don't know what the business numbers are, because sometimes they have Ethernet and all this other stuff, I don't know what it is. But if it's in a house, the cost is $49 for 500 up and 500 down, which right now is, to me, is all I'll ever need. And my office is out of my house, and stuff, but some folks, they'll have more going on, they'll want a gig. Fine, that's 70,
But
that's
some,
80.
some systems that you have in the house, like, I don't know what you call it, not the router, but the other thing, they won't even go that fast, so you can overbuy too. So for that price, you get the telephone and all?
Now, I don't know, honestly, if there is a fee for the phone service. I don't know that, so to be perfectly clear, but yes, you can do it. That's what it's for, ostensibly, is for the phone.
Usually there's a few extra bucks for each phone line or
Yeah,
something.
I don't know if it's a bundle or what.
I'm interested in seeing it, actually.
Well, you're going to, it's coming. I just want to make sure you're not surprised. And so I want to reiterate, Kevin's got my, and Ken both, they have my cell number. We had to use that a lot just to get this presentation up here. That was a whole nother story. If either you get my cell number from him, or just let him know and he'll call me. And I just do not want you surprised, and I want you frustrated. So that's why I'm here.
Nice.
okay, do we need to do anything else?
No, it's just
We're good
presentation,
to go? All
FYI.
right, thank
Good.
you.
Thanks, very nice,
Thank you all.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, with that,
Have
we'll
fun at Lathrop tomorrow.
move on to budget discussion.
Yes.
Kevin?
That's me. So this is the third time we've talked about the upcoming budget. The first time was a strategic planning meeting.
Because we're slow?
No, it's a process, it's a process, and not to do it all in one night. But we did a strategic planning meeting that set a lot of the big picture direction for not only this budget, but future budgets as well. The last meeting we had in May, we talked about the revenue side of the budget, and tonight we're going to talk more on the expense side. So Hunter, if you don't mind, there you go. So this is a slide we've showed a number of times, but just to remind everyone, the budget has a lot of different categories. We categorize them between operating funds, capital funds, and restricted funds. Generally, the operating funds are the general fund, and this is where we get the funds from the taxes, sales tax, property taxes, and the council has discretion how they do that, how they use that money and allocate those funds. Every year, as part of the budget, we do transfer money to the general capital funds, and you see different funds there. And again, you have discretion within the general capital funds. Enterprise operating funds are those that we go through a process to set those rates. It's the 218 process. We have that for the water, sewer, and garbage operating funds. There's less discretion the council has with these funds, but we do set money aside for future capital replacement, like we just talked about with the general funds. And you see those different categories below the enterprise capital funds that have been set up. The other category under capital funds is the PFFP or AB 1600 funds. These are funds that have been money we receive from developers that we use to expand our system, to extend pipelines and new wells and such. And then lastly, we have restricted funds. These are like the benefit assessment districts, landscape lighting districts, and street road funds. So this slide is summarizes the operating budget for the entire city. This has the general fund and all the funds we just talked about, but it's 23.3 million, and you can see a majority of that is in the general fund and enterprise funds. This is how we allocate that $23.3 million. 34% of that for salaries, 21% to the burden, 29% operational. Like I said, the 23.3 is the operating. In addition to that, there are transfers that happen, like from the operating funds to the capital funds, and then there's the capital projects that are also included in the budget. We'll talk more specifically about those in future slides.
So, Kevin, on that last slide, just to clarify, so 55% of your budget essentially is devoted to labor, is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. And that's a great transition to our next slide. labor. And we did this 2 years ago, I think, so some of it's a little outdated, but we compared our full-time staffing to 10 other cities in the area. And you can see on this slide, you know, they're fairly close in most categories. Administration, the average of the 10 cities we did is the dark blue line. Ripon is the lighter blue line. But for administration, planning, recreation, we're fairly close, and even with building, you know, we're a little bit behind. Sometimes not always apples to apples. You can see engineering, Ripon is slightly higher than the other cities we did, and that's because we do a lot of the designs ourselves. We do construction management ourselves. We try to limit the amount of consultants that we bring on to help us with projects. Public Works, it is, again, a little apples and oranges. Some cities don't do their own garbage service. Some cities don't do even their own park service. So we do a lot of this stuff, self-perform a lot of that, so that's the reason we're higher there. Police Department, we're about, you know, the numbers we talk about, and the metric we use is typically the number of sworn officers per 1,000 residents. We're just under 1.5 officers per 1,000 residents, much higher than the other cities that are in the county. And we're really able to do that because of the money we're receiving from sales tax is a big part of that. And I think in San Joaquin County, we're the second highest. We're behind Stockton. Besides that, we have done very well about staffing our police department. And the one that's a little outdated is the non-sworn. There's been some significant changes, and we're probably even higher than that now because of the dispatch and the number of dispatchers we've added, taken on the Lathrop contract. But again, that number too is a little harder because not all cities do their own dispatch. So I think the bottom line of that slide is I think our staffing levels are pretty competitive. You know, we try to be very efficient with the staff that we have. And you can see what's happened since 2008, prior to the recession and then through the recession and then where we're at in 2022. The reason for the largest increase you see in 2022 is the 6 new dispatchers that we have added. But if you took those aside, we're still 16% less staff than we had in 2008 prior to the recession. And that really is because we've been, you know, and the city has grown, obviously, with the population and businesses that we have. But we still try to maintain a high level of service that we provide the community. And we've been doing that by trying to be strategic about using one-time money and taking that one-time money and purchasing one-time capital expense that allows us to be more efficient with the staff that we have. You know, LPR cameras was an investment that was made by the city. We used to read the meters individually. We've gone away from that, and we now use cell service to get the meter readings and not have to send staff out to do that. And then at times we also use consultants with workload issues. That happens a lot in the building department. If there's a large number of projects coming through and we're trying to get those out so they can begin construction, we'll bring on consultants to help us during those higher periods. Same with the engineering department. With that, and as part of this budget, there are some recommended staffing changes, and I could go through those and what the financial impacts are with those. Right on the left side is the current staffing summary, and in the IT, we've had an IT Tech 2 position, that was a full-time position, and a part-time IT Tech 1. So that was what I call 1.5 full-time equivalents in the IT department. And you can see the salary benefits and the total financial impact to the general fund in this case. What's being recommended is to change the IT Tech 1 position from a part-time to a full-time position. And what the benefit of this is it increases reliability in the IT department with our staff. And there's a lot of times things are happening in the police department where someone has to come in on weekends, after hours to help resolve those issues. So we would have 2 people available to do that. And then obviously there's times in this economy now, with individuals leaving jobs, at least now you have some recovery while you're bringing on another individual to train and take over a new position. So the net impact of that change would be an increase of $63,000 to the general fund. The other position that's being recommended is another patrol officer. If you have questions, Ed could talk more about it, but essentially his plan is to use an officer, add a SIU position, Special Investigations Unit, or position for someone to investigate drugs and gang activity. That would be the focus, and that would add 19 up to 19 patrol officer positions. There is some savings with overtime by having this position, and the net impact to the general fund would be an increase of $91,000. The other position being recommended is regulatory compliance. This is something, we've talked a lot about the impacts that we're going through in the garbage operations, water operations, and we also go through it in stormwater operations. So far, we've gotten by with meeting all the regulatory compliance required by the state through the Public Works Department and the Engineering Department. What's being proposed is to hire one individual that would take all of that and organize it and making sure we're being compliant as required by the law. So that would be a new position, and it would be allocated between the water, sewer, and garbage operations, and it would be about $42,000 for each of those funds, an increase in the operating expense. The other position, we have had part-time water conservation positions here at the city. That has been a difficult position with turnover, especially in the part-time, and so we're having to train new people, bring new people on. What's being proposed is to bring a full-time position on that could really focus on water conservation, but also in times when there's not such a demand in water conservation, could help in the maintenance side and public works and maintaining likely the water system or wherever Public Works needs that person to be helping out. But that would be a net impact to the water operating fund of just under $59,000.
So they'd be in James' department?
Yes, yeah. So would the regulatory compliance
Yeah.
position, that would work for James as well.
Kevin, on the reg compliance position, and I have no doubt you need that because that's the nature of the environment we live in now in California, but is that a person who you expect could be cross-trained to also do some other things if he doesn't have a full week of work to do in the reg compliance department?
We certainly could, and that is something that we've been doing with our staff. We've gotten away from really the silos in the departments. Joanne Buchelman is a great example. She helps out in the police department doing their audits. So, if there's a time this person has extra time to help out in other departments, we certainly would cross-train and assign them to do those duties. Any other questions on this slide? If not, retirement plan, obviously Ripon is very unique. Most cities, all the employees are within CalPERS, a defined benefit type of retirement plan. We don't have that. Only our sworn officers are in that type of plan, and you hear a lot of that with some of the financial struggles other cities are going to, specifically with changes that have been made to actuarial assumptions of those plans, and now that has resulted in very large unfunded liabilities. We still have that. We've talked about how to mitigate that, and we are through a 115 trust, but we are still in a much better position than other cities, and that's because the majority of our employees are a defined contribution plan. And this is a plan very similar to a 401k plan, so when an employee retires, that is the amount of money that they have contributed to that plan and able to take with them. There's no liability after they leave the city that we would be responsible for. These are the different, with CalPERS, there's 3 tiers, and you can see the number of employees in each of those tiers, the resulting cost or expense to the 22-23 budget, and then how much per employee. And then below that, what the expense is per employee in the defined contribution plan. But you can see the tier 1, and that does include unfunded liability in those numbers, but it's a pretty substantial number with the tier 1 employees.
Well, that's gonna get worse.
Right, it is, yeah. And you're, even as your number of employees go down, the unfunded liability is gonna continue to go up.
Yeah.
Health and welfare, obviously another big expense, as you saw in one of the earlier slides that Councilmember Barton pointed out where a lot of our expenses are at. But we've been working very hard, and I give a lot of credit to Bohannon's on helping us through Affordable Care Act and different options that have come up over the time. And I think they kept us on a very steady path where our average annual increases are about 3% a year over the last 12 years. So that's been very good. And I'll just point out in calendar year 2022 is very close to the previous year, but really what's happened there is we have a lot of younger employees without families. So that has provided a little bit of a savings as well between those 2 years.
I'll just make a quick comment from a private sector standpoint. If we had been able to average 3% a year, we'd feel very, very good about that.
Right.
I can tell you we haven't been able to do that, so
Right.
good for you.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the general fund. This is just operating revenue and expenses. And then on the right side, it shows the balance of the general fund. And this is a slide that we showed many times. This does not include any of the transfers that happen with the general fund. So at the end of the year, last year, which is the solid skinny blue line, we ended up with just under a $1 million surplus, if you will, again, before transfers. And then with the 22-23 budget is the thicker solid blue line. We're showing or expecting to be in a very similar position. What's interesting is when you look at the 21-22 balance over time, which is the dashed line, with the additional revenue we're getting from sales tax right now, you can see that we're doing quite a bit better than what we had done the previous year. Overall, general fund revenue, we talked about this last time, $15.1 million of revenue, largely from sales tax and property taxes. And then you can see the other sources of revenue that we get. And then the general fund budget, very close. It's essentially a balanced budget once you include the transfers. And that's very close to the revenue that we're receiving. And this breaks it up by department, and you can see the majority of the money is going into the police department at 56%. Next highest is administration, 16%, and then parks, 7%. Actually, if you include Mislin in that, 10%. Talking about Mislin, one of the things I think the council asked early on is, the financial position of the sports park over time. It's obviously, a lot of it has been created through the very generous donations of Tony Mislin, but at the same time, there is a very concern of getting one-time money through those donations and then the ongoing expense it takes to take care of it. So I started reporting to the council what those expenses and revenue looks like over time. And I think when we first started looking at this, we were recovering about 56% of our money. We don't charge revenue or we don't charge rent to our own city rec programs. But if you happen to charge rent similar to what we're charging other organizations, the city would have recovered 70%. So that's where we were in 11-12. And then COVID's a little bit of an anomaly, but you can see some steady improvements throughout the years. And in 22, 23, we're expecting to recover 77% of the expenses through revenue without considering the city rec programs, and close to 90% if we were to charge our own programs. Some of the years it fluctuates just because of capital projects or different projects. I know recently in 21, 22, Public Works had done, there was a diseased turf out there and they had to go repair a lot of the turf, so that increased some of the expenses. The other thing I would point out, that does include the fountain, which we don't get any revenue for the fountain, but it's out there, so we've included it in the expenses. So we'll continue to making sure we're covering as much of those expenses as we can at Mislin. Oh, the other thing I'd point out on that is this doesn't consider sales tax or any TOT tax comes from people who are using that.
Kevin, let me make sure I understand it. Can you go back that, please? So what I'm seeing is our total revenue out there is $770,000.
Our total revenue is for projected for 22, 23 is $358,000.
So what's the 415 then?
That's if you included
Yeah, if you added rent from the Ripon Soccer League or flag football or, yeah.
Right, but that would make a total of 700,000, right?
No, I include the 358 as a top line item.
It's just a fake number,
Okay.
in a sense.
But yeah,
Okay, I got you. I got you.
To get the 415, we'd have to rob Peter to pay Paul.
I got it. I
Right.
can see that. I got it. Okay.
and just on the paper.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Do you work with numbers much?
I don't. I'm thought about trying to start.
We go through, five or so years ago, we created a very large spreadsheet that has all the different capital items we have here at the city. And I work with the department heads as part of the budget process to determine the timing, not only for this budget, but future budgets, so we can start planning replacement of some of those items. But this is what is proposed to be included in the 22-23 budget. From the department capital fund, we have $1.1 million in that fund right now, and there would be a total of $312,000 capital purchases. A couple things I'd point out, there is an investment being made in radios for the police department. So what you see on here is $75,000 for the 22-23 year, but that only gets you a third of the way. So we're planning to include this in the next two budgets as well, so they could get complete replacement of their radios.
45,000.
Both vehicles and the portables. The animal shelter, this is something we had in last year's budget, just with COVID and some of the challenges with getting the stainless steel material. We've included it again in this budget. Nothing got expensed to that. But there's been a lot of damage to the cabinets and doors just through the bleaching, and when they first put them in, they weren't intended to have that kind of wear. Park and Rec capital, this is again money that has been transferred from the general fund to this fund. Resurfacing the basketball courts, this was a safety issue that was brought up at a council meeting, so we have included that in this budget. The Aquatic Center Committee from the city has met with the school district and recommending that we include a locker room remodel. We actually took a tour of it, and they're in pretty bad shape. So this would remodel the locker rooms there. So that's totals $264,000. And then something we talked quite a bit about at the strategic planning meeting is COVID relief funds. So you could see here what that list looks like. Tennis court reconstruction is part of that. Kai did a great job going out and getting a grant to do that. So I think the grant is about $200,000 or $180,000, I believe, and then $262,000 would come from the COVID relief funds. We do have a West Side Master Plan. This is the area west of Jacktone Road, essentially between Jacktone, an extension of Canal Boulevard, Santos, and Olive. Because of the efforts of Ken in the Planning Department and Economic Development, a lot of our non-residential land has been developed. So this really is beginning to look at the west side of Jacktone Road and what that would look at. So we expect to hire a consultant. Ken's got a RFP ready and would be working with the council and the public at identifying the zoning and infrastructure needed for those future development projects. Big one is the courtyard, and you'll see this again on another slide, but $1.8 million of that COVID relief funds would be applied to the courtyard, or really the vehicle maintenance facility. Any questions with this slide?
Yeah, Kevin, what's the asterisk on the shooting range improvement? What's that?
You know, I meant to take that off, and I apologize. It was left over from something, and I don't remember what it was. The budget committee asked me the same question, and I said I was going to take it off.
I saw it first.
Yeah. I've looked at this so many times too, and I haven't noticed that asterisk.
Just highlighting it.
Probably because it's not going to be
Important.
available to.
You wanted somebody to ask about it.
Street and roads, we've talked a lot about this. I'm not going to get into all the details of this, but you know, street and roads has always been a challenge, just with the limitations on the funding we get through gas taxes, and then at the same time, the state really limits our ability to use other funds besides those gas taxes to repair our roads. So, City of Ripon, like many other cities through California, have really been struggling to maintain our roads. We've had some successes. PCI score has been slowly increasing over the years, and that's largely because of the city's policy of using pavers around the city. The pavers allows us to not have to spend the gas tax money, the limited gas tax money, to do the maintenance required on asphalt streets. Pavers is very, very low maintenance fiscal requirements. The other win is we didn't lose all our LTF money. This is money we get, local transit funds that we get through the state, and is generated through sales tax. But the intent of that money is to go to transit. But because of the size of the city and we don't have unmet transit needs, we've historically been able to use all of that money for street and roads. There's a lot of discussion at COG, maybe 2 or 3 years of discussions, and I know Leo was a big part of those. But they did require us to allocate 25% of those funds to transit. But that really is good news at the end of the day, because there was a potential of losing a lot more than that. And then the other thing, the other good news is Stockton Avenue. We had planned that the city's street and road funds were going to pay for that whole project, and we got it largely paid for from grants. So that has allowed us to be a little bit more aggressive going forward with some of our street and road projects. And how we determine those projects, the policy of the council is to allocate 50% of the money we get to preventive maintenance projects and 50% with reconstruction. And then we select the projects based off, we prioritize based off safety concerns. We try to have geographical equity. We don't try to put them all on one side of the town or one area. We try to split that up. And then same with zoning, not all within residential, but commercial and other areas. And then the one other thing, the council has been setting aside reserve funds, or surplus funds from the general fund to a street and road reserve fund. Right now the balance is $2.4 million. And the idea was to go out and reconstruct the worst roads in Ripon, not to do preventive maintenance, but actually to do reconstruction.
Getting up there,
Yeah,
that's something we all could be proud of.
I agree.
There was nothing there 5 years ago.
Right.
And if you can leverage it with some grant funds, you can actually make it go somewhere.
Make
Yeah,
it-
Yeah,
that's,
that'd do about 1.5 miles,
Well, that,
But it's a mile and a half that would not have happened otherwise.
well, that's good, but a perfect statement that you made though on Stockton Street. I'll be glad when it's done, but
Pretty close. It's done.
is it getting,
They
well,
put the
it's,
last of the
well, I've been
pavers down today.
avoiding it because, you know, but,
You ought to drive on that thing. You get a totally different
Yeah.
view of that whole part of town now.
It looks very different.
is it? So it,
Yeah, you
it's
just see it
almost,
without going up and
so
down.
it's pretty much,
It's done. They put the last of the pavers down today.
oh, well, I better go by there
Yeah,
tomorrow
it
morning.
looks great.
Even you can go drive down the street now.
Well, that lowrider truck of
Let us
mine,
know how it turns out.
yeah, I will. Cool.
So, and really, with the efforts that have gone into Stockton Avenue and some of the changes we've had in the engineering department, we've held back putting some projects out to bid. But if I remember right, our street and road operating balance right now is close to $3.5 million. So that really allows us to be aggressive, and this list shows those projects over the next 3 years. I would say the negative of this right now is the price of construction. With the increase in fuel prices, our money is not gonna go far enough. But I think from staff's perspective, we at least wanted to start putting the projects out, especially like with River Road. It's a project, if we don't start doing that overlay now, it's gonna require reconstruction at some
Is
point.
River that bad already?
Yeah. And it just gets really beat up with the truck traffic that's on it.
Yeah.
It's only an overlay. It's not rebuilt. You
Yeah.
think we can rebuild Cobblestone Court for $350,000?
I didn't do that number, but I don't know in today's economy, but I think with,
Depending on what you find under there.
well, that's a good point. We haven't done the reconstruction or the investigation yet. The other thing I would say is in 23, 24, we do have a number of roads that were in the Rapona area. Engineering staff applied for a Safe Route to School grant. We got that grant. And that included Second Street as well, to put some improvements to help calm traffic. But we also have that in this area too. So we're gonna combine this project with that Safe Route to School project next year. Enterprise Operating Fund, I think overall, we're in a really good position. We did a 5-year rate study in 2020, and we evaluate this every year. So I'm not gonna get into the details of it, but the one thing I would say is the garbage has been a challenge. It's been a challenge to, when we do these, you don't always estimate correctly, especially the regulatory expenses that are going along with these funds. And in garbage, the other thing that I think caught us off guard, is the increase in tipping fees. And that really is a function of the state mandated requirements. Our haulers, not haulers, but the sites where we go to, that they've had to adjust to now. But, that goes down to us, and it goes to our residents eventually. But we've seen a substantial increase in tipping fees with garbage. And it's resulted in not being able to transfer the funds we anticipated transferring to the capital funds. So that's been the biggest challenge that we've had.
Well, I think it's gonna get worse.
I think so too, yeah. We are trying to account now for regulatory expenses. You can see it in here. This is really a rough guess on my part, just to give you kind of an order of magnitude. But we're gonna start doing a more detailed job of including that in reports to the council and what those expenses are. And especially when we start going out to the public and showing what the increase in rates are, we would like to show how much of that is related to regulatory increases. Capital outlay, these are for the 3 enterprise funds. Garbage enterprise capital, you can see the balance is $1.2 million, and the total expense that is being recommended is $910,000. That is much closer than what we would like to do in that fund, but that fund has no debt associated with it, so that reduces some of the concerns. And then the other thing that James is doing right now, just trying to be creative, he has an opportunity, and they're testing out a Mack truck. It's a different type of truck that we normally use, but a vendor had one available. They've been testing it and having other cities use it as a test vehicle, and they're trying to sell it right now. So we may well buy that for half the price of what a garbage truck would go for. But it has low miles, and hopefully it's positive, and we get with that. So, or able to end up with that, and then that would, exactly, yeah. Landscape districts, the yellow are those districts that are the older districts, did not include the indexing, and essentially the general fund is making up the deficit that we see each year. Those in blue, those are districts that do have a balance, but they have recently, they have deficit situations, and we're drawing down those balances until probably such time in the near future, those are added to the general fund, having to transfer funds to make up those deficits. But in the near future, we're using those balances to make that up. And then the ones who are kind of in that light red, those are ones that are CPI'd and in a much better financial position going forward. So the lighting district, you can see on here, this goes back to when we created it, and the black line is the balance over time, and it corresponds to the right side of this figure. But you can see, really early on, we ended up in a pretty significant deficit situation with taking over the lighting district. We were about $300,000 in the negative, and that really hit bottom in 2007. Over time, we were getting out of that hole. The best we got to was in 15-16. We had a deficit of about $100,000. And right around that time, there was a couple things that were happening with PG&E and questions and concerns we had with the billing from PG&E. And we saw a significant increase in those bills, and that resulted in that reduction in the balance that you see in 18-19, really, where we hit bottom right there. We worked with PG&E, and we got it all resolved. I know Joanne Buchelman had a big part of that, and James and others in the engineering department was involved in that as well. So we feel good about it. I think if you look at the black line starting at 15-16, if you just projected to 2021, you would see it would be a more stable line, trending like you would expect it to trend. So we felt good that we figured out the problems that we had. And then since then, we're in a position right now where we're just about out of that deficit situation. We have some debt with this year, 21-22 was the last time we've had to pay on the debt to install induction lights around the community. So that, like Councilmember Zuber said earlier, that's providing us a little bit of relief right now. I think, like we say at the bottom, the real challenge we have, this was set at $42 per single family equivalent in 2007, and it's not indexed. So the expenses continue to go up over time. That is not going up. So that's something we're going to have to look ahead and see how to resolve, which is likely going to be an increase in that rate, that assessment. So we could talk about some options when that time comes. The other thing that James and Public Works is looking into right now is the induction lights. Everything has transitioned to LED. We want to make sure that those equipment still are available and going to be available in the foreseeable future, because if not, we need to start planning, putting money aside to do that capital replacement and replace those all to LED.
PG&E replaced all of theirs.
They replaced all of theirs, yeah. All of ours are still induction, for the most part. New subdivisions now, we are putting LED in. And then James was just telling me, if just the bulb of induction is out, they're replacing just the bulb. But if the bulb and, I forgot the other apparatus, is out, they're replacing all that with LED. So going forward, this is going to be part of the conversation, because you could see in 26-7, 27-28, you can see where it starts topping out, and then after that, the balance starts going back down. So, you know, we still got a couple years, but it's something we really need to watch. And then
Kevin, would any
induction
of those
behavior
rate
program.
increases necessitate a public vote, or?
Yeah, it would. It would be
This
a,
one does.
yeah.
And this one, utilities, it's the negative vote. But this one, it requires a positive vote,
This
doesn't it?
requires a positive.
Yeah.
Capital improvement projects, this is the list we have for 22-23. The biggest project, and this is one of the larger projects that we've had in some time, we call it vehicle maintenance facility, but really it is gonna be a new corporation yard for the Public Works Department. They've been at the end of Vera now for decades, and it's outdated, and you know, I think desperately in need of improvements. So this new facility, we're expecting this bid to come in at just under $9.2 million. And, you know, projects like this aren't easy to fund. And you can see on the right side, as far as the funding sources, how we're doing that. We mentioned earlier, it does include $1.8 million from COVID-19 relief funds, our enterprise funds, because it is, you know, those funds are part of the operations where they're going to be maintaining that equipment. They are contributing to it. And then future growth. This facility is designed to support the city at a population of 25,000. So AB 1600 funds are allocated a certain percent of those expenses as well. It's $4.3 million. We haven't collected that kind of money from development at this time. So what we've talked about in the strategic planning meeting is a loan from the general fund mitigation fee that we've collected. I think right now in that account is about $8 million or so. So there would be a $3.9 million loan, and that would be paid back through growth in the city. So we do collect money specifically for the corporation yard, so that would be paid back as we receive that money. The other thing that we've done is we had bond proceeds when we had a redevelopment agency. We had initially loaned that money to move forward on the 4 baseball fields at Mifflin Sports Park. That has since been paid back, and the council has allocated that to this project as well. So that's how we get to the $9.2 million. The rest, there are some projects I do show on here in 23, 24, just looking ahead where we have gotten some grant money on those projects and working to get those projects designed and ready to go out to bid. And then the projects that have been priority projects or near-term priority projects of the city council, I've included those on here as well. And we got to staff is working on figuring out the funding sources. One thing we are doing is with the SSJID surface water project. When we talk about rates this year, we're also going to revisit some funding options with that project. And if we did go out to bid, to bond, what that would look like as far as impacts to the ratepayers. I think we're going to do the same thing with the, if we're going to do improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. Because those are 2 important projects for Ripon, and it's important just to recognize where we're at as far as the funding and the challenges we have and some maybe opportunities we have. Any other questions on this slide?
So I know I'm a bit of a broken record, but I just want to highlight again the SSJID surface water connection. That's something that I will continue to voice to the council and to staff. That is a window for Ripon that is not open indefinitely. And the process to do that, in my opinion, gets both more expensive and more complicated as we wait to really dig into that and demonstrate a commitment that we're moving forward. So do you have any additional information on that one at this time, Kevin?
No, we are gonna update the estimate for that project. This has been a while since we've looked at the estimate. And then we are gonna ask the, Tom Pavlitich, who does our rates, to plug it in. If we were gonna go out and bond for that project, or the incremental difference, we have been collecting money, through the AB 1600 program, and for that project. So, you know, what we have now and what the increment we need, if we were gonna go out and bond for that, what would that look like? And then the other thing with it is, as we operate our wells, the operating cost is very low. Going to SSJID, that there is a substantial increase in operating costs. So we'll get an estimate from them too of what that would look like as well, just to make sure the council sees the full impacts and what that would look like. Debt, City of Ripon is, been very frugal with debt. We have taken out debt to expand, water and the sewer system, and you can see, the different bonds we've taken out. There's two bonds that are actually gonna be paid off here in the near future. Water bonds, are gonna be paid off in 2023, and sewer bonds in 2025. RDA bonds, we just refinanced those recently. Those don't get paid off to 2036, but we have 5 years of right now where we are, we're having a savings, and that is part of the budget and being transferred towards the 115 trust to fund that new, hopefully mitigation for the unfunded liability with PERS. We also have, I don't know if you really want to call it debt, but I call it internal debt, funds that we're tracking that we've loaned and not had to go out to a bond market and pay all those fees and interest rates. But Missland parking lot, this is what the city's contribution was when Tony built the Rage facility, and, you know, Rage did a number of improvements. The city did fund the parking lot. So the money that we receive from rent from Rage, which is about $80,000 a year, is getting transferred to the Park and Rec Capital Fund. JKB mitigation fees, because he did a project that had both residential and commercial, and the commercial was generating revenue from the city. We did waive his mitigation fees for the residential side of it, and then the money that's being generated from the sales tax from that commercial development is being transferred to the mitigation fee fund. Water meter installation, this is when we added water meters to the houses that didn't have them in 2015. All the residents that had the water meter installed are paying surcharges. So we have $800 and some thousand left of that liability, and that's gonna be paid off here in the next couple of years. And then the most recent one was Happy Days RV incentive. That was $1.3 million, and expecting that, depending on the revenue, to be paid off between 2024 and 2027.
That's impressive.
How about the boat country?
They paid theirs off.
They're done?
They were done in 1 or 2 years, 1 year maybe,
Who's that?
Bow Country.
Oh, God, yes.
Well,
The
the
amount
other
of
one will
boats
be
that-
added, that we approved
Yeah.
tonight will be added as
Yeah, we'll
well.
add that one.
Wow, they
boats that
paid
get
it off
sold, they're both
already, huh?
incredible.
That was pretty quick.
They bring 2 pickup loads.
Yeah, we thought it was gonna take 3 years.
Twice a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Impressive.
Good thing we got them before the economy tanked.
Yeah, but it hasn't affected them.
Be curious to know how much their, the Happy Days, what their maintenance facility's gonna cost there versus what the courtyard's gonna cost.
Well, their maintenance facility is 3 times as big as our.
I know, it's probably half the cost of what our courtyard's gonna be, cause we're doing a.
Well, let's have
couple
Happy
days.
Days to build it for us.
Oh, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Let them contract it out.
Be curious to know what the dollar number is there.
Yeah.
Don't
Well, Chad.
Well, I know, I'll find out someday.
So
Cry myself to sleep.
I have the budget ready, so I'm gonna send that out to the council. I can send you I'll send everyone a PDF. If you would like a hard copy, let me know, and I'll print you out a hard copy, so you'll see all these details.
Save the paper.
you'll see all these details in the budget, and happy to sit down with each of you, and talk about any questions you have. And then it'll be on the July agenda for public hearing and council approval.
Are we done?
Done.
So, anybody got any more questions for Kevin?
Oh, yeah, I got a list here.
Okay, with that, then,
8:00 after we're gone.
Chief, got anything to report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of quick announcements. We still have COVID-19 antigen tests available at the police department. So if anybody would like them, please stop by between the hours of 10 and 3 and have your fill. We have plenty. Our junior police academy, I'm sorry?
I can get more.
Oh, our junior police academy starts June 27th for the basic class, and our advanced class will be July 11th. We stopped taking applications, but we can accommodate last-minute parents trying to get kids in if
I'm sorry,
needed.
Chief, what was that for? What class?
Junior Police Academy?
Oh,
Is there an age restriction on that? Because he might need it.
He attended our community police
anybody
academy.
that acts like a child, so you and I can go.
Okay. When's it start?
On June 29th, we have 2 new dispatchers that will be starting with our agency. And the last announcement is June 24th through the 26th, our Explorer cadets will be participating in the Central Valley Explorer competition in Tracy.
Oh, that's right. That's what the raffle tickets were for, right?
Yes. So if anybody would like to attend opening ceremonies on Friday morning, I'll be attending, and you can feel free to ride up with me.
Are all the dispatcher positions filled now?
We have one more vacancy.
Okay.
Kai? Ken?
Yeah, just a quick sneak peek at the next 3 months for Planning Commission. We have a couple items going on Monday, a variance and a small project on South Stockton. For this month, next month, should be Bethany Homes project for the July meeting, go in front of the Planning Commission, and then that will come in front of council at the August meeting for final approval. As well as a small liquor store that wants to build out by Popeyes will be in the July meeting as well. And then August meeting, we have a fitness center wanting to build out by Les Schwab out there, that last parcel in that whole development out there by Happy Days. And a mini storage project on East 4th Street down on Gunner's property, so.
Hey, a lot of people have been asking me, when's the car wash gonna be done?
When's the dishwasher gonna get done?
They are about ready to pull the permit to start that car wash. So they do have some, they are kind of a married project there with the convenience market and gas station. They can only get so far with the convenience market and gas station. And the car wash has to be substantially
So that
completed or
building
started,
hasn't even
so.
started yet? I thought that was,
No, that's the convenience
not
market
the
that
one.
started.
Just that they
Yeah.
graded for it.
oh, I thought it was.
So hopefully shortly here, another month, you might see some sticks going up in the air over there, but I think everybody's excited.
They got a year more out then.
End of the summer.
Yeah.
They pull
Maybe.
code, man, if that stuff goes up.
Okay, Tom? Good. Kevin?
Nothing to report.
You're lucky. Yes. Barton?
My name's Gary Barton, Mr. Mayor.
I don't know why you.
He's a council
When
member.
I look at you, you're so good looking, it freezes me out.
Just a quick comment, we're approaching our Independence Day, looking forward to celebrating our 246th year as what I believe is the greatest nation to ever exist. We will be celebrating in part of that, doing our part in our little block party. Councilman DeGraff and I and our fire chief and a number of other folks, so we're looking forward to that. And grateful to live in this country.
Dan?
Why do you always make me go after Gary?
Because
Makes me sound so
you're the
bad.
only one that can match up with him.
Oh, is
his
that it?
abilities.
Okay. I don't really have much to say other than thank you for everybody who's here. Kelly, I mean, you're pretty quiet lately. I'm sure there's some good things going on at the chamber, so, you know, one of these days, we're gonna want you to come up and, you know, tell us what's going on over there, but, perfect, I won't. Yeah, no, thank you to everyone who was listening, anybody that came, and that's about it.
Mr. Zuber?
Nothing.
Mr. Verstuccio?
Happy Flag Day. Oh, by the way, DC is so out of whack, they put 51 stars on their flag, you read, right? Did you read
They're
that?
gonna add a state.
We're gonna add another state, California.
No, they're just dreaming.
No, Puerto Rico, DC.
With that,
Yeah,
good
Bowser
night.
had special flag made with 51 stars.
Such good time.
Okay.
Straight